Welcome to another episode of the Bandage Podcast, a weekly wrap-up of the most trending healthcare news. Each week, join me and my co-host Alex Ross as we'll discuss the latest in healthcare, health IT, and compliance. In this week's episode, we discuss recycled fitness trackers, new voice-enabled technology linked with EHRs, and certification in telehealth for graduate students. Let's wrap things up. This is episode 22 for the week of March 2nd. I'm Matt Moneypenny.
And I'm Alex Ross.
Before we get started, our diagnosis code of the week is struck by a turtle, W58.22.
You know, interestingly enough, Matt, this has happened to me.
Has it happened?
Believe it or not. Yeah. So way back when I was a Boy Scout, we used to go fishing almost constantly because what else are you going to do when you're, out in the woods with a fishing pole and not much else?
Mm-hmm.
And one day I threw my line out and I thought I had grabbed like a log or something because it was just not moving.
Yes.
And so I was really wrenching on this fishing pole, just pulling on it. And then my buddy who was standing next to me hits me in the head with a turtle shell. I don't know why he did it, but he did. And
so you were struck by a turtle shell, which could be
correct.
A different diagnosis code. Can we stay on topic here, young man?
Oh, my bad. I didn't realize that turtle shell and turtle were two separate
totally
objects.
Different things in the eyes of healthcare providers.
No, that didn't happen. Okay, that was a lie. But when I was living a life of crime, I once had 4 turtles in masks strike me repeatedly.
They lived inside of the sewage
system.
They
did, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Teenage Mutant struck by turtle. And with that, let's get right into the news. First up, we have Reduce, Reuse, Recycle Health Devices. An assistant professor at Tufts Medical School started the program Recycle Health, which collects fitness trackers such as Fitbits and Apple Watches. The program then refurbishes them and shares them with underserved populations. They've already collected over 5,000 trackers and sent them to nonprofit organizations since they began in 2015. It's provided wearables to the homeless, veterans, senior homes, and other low-income communities. The professor got the idea when preparing for a class lecture, and she stumbled upon the statistic that about 30% of smartwatches and trackers are abandoned, which she thought was highly wasteful, and that the devices often end up in landfills. Fitness tracking companies have even donated older models that they can no longer sell because of software updates, so they're giving them to the professor.
I think that's probably the bigger opportunity, is just old stock that really can't be sold anymore.
Right? I think that could be like a huge business trend moving forward. Just anything that's outdated software, just give it to people who are less fortunate and then see what happens. I mean, obviously there's a security risk involved potentially, but if they're underserved, that's pretty great because, I mean, their health is more important than their personal data, maybe? I don't know.
I'm actually really surprised to hear that 30% of trackers are abandoned. And I guess it makes sense that they would have pretty accurate numbers on this, right? Because one day you're tracking your footsteps and then the next day you just stop.
Yes.
Right? You don't take any steps forever. And so either that user of your app just died or they stopped using their tracker. And so they would probably have a good idea of how often.
They could even do like reward programs. It's like, hey, have you stopped using this for the past 6 months? Or hey, like we sent you an email like says, you haven't used this in 6 months. Maybe you can return it to us and we'll give it to someone who wants to use it, who's less fortunate. Yeah. And we'll give you some gift cards or something.
I could see that becoming an actual partnership between this Recycle Health and companies like Fitbit, to where Fitbit actually promotes, or other companies as well. That's the one I think of because that's what I got. Promoting this opportunity, like, hey, now that you've just bought a new device, which we saw because you just linked it, why don't you send in your old one and donate it to this company here? I think that would be pretty cool. But again, I'm surprised, 30%. I wear mine until I inevitably break it, and then I get a new one. So my broken ones probably aren't going to help anyone.
Right. I am old school. Call me traditional, but I use watches to tell time.
You count your steps on a piece of paper as you're walking.
1 tally, 2 tally.
You've got records
Congratulations
going back years.
To that assistant professor, because that's a pretty cool idea.
That is a pretty cool idea. Now, I think they're going to be a little harder pressed to get things like Apple Watches because those have
those are expensive.
Higher value than your standard Fitbit.
Obviously she's come along through some of them, so we'll see.
So whichever one of these companies wants to kind of revolutionize their business, they should pick this up immediately and just like.
Do you think
dive
that Apple
into it.
has a trademark on the name Apple Core? Because it could be the name for refurbished Apple devices. Because you've eaten most of it, but you still have the core left.
Terrible.
That's great.
That's terrible.
Hire me, Apple. I'm just kidding.
Apple, are you looking for a new marketer? Next up, Nuance reduces EHR nuisance. Nuance Communications launched its EHR-linked Dragon Ambient Experience, DAX, technology. DAX helps boost the physician and patient experience by securely capturing and contextualizing their exam room conversations. It improves clinical documentation while reducing the chance that the EHR will disrupt conversations. DAX uses advanced ambient sensing technology and artificial intelligence to improve patient satisfaction while easing clinician burden.
Yeah, so what we're seeing a lot in healthcare is EHRs are taking up a lot of physicians' time, so much so that they're spending more time within the EHR during an appointment than with the patient because they have to fill out everything and go through clunky UIs and whatnot. So this is pretty neat. Voice recording appointments. I mean, I imagine that it transcribes it too.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it didn't, listening to that wouldn't be very beneficial. But
so the company Dragon,
yeah,
which you may have heard of from products like Dragon Naturally Speaking, that's probably their biggest. Mm-hmm. That's their company. Their company is doing voice to text.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not surprised to see that they're diving into kind of the healthcare side.
Slay the dragon that is clunky EHRs with Dragon Ambient Experience.
This sounds like
provided by Nuance. We're not sponsored by Nuance. I just thought it was kind of interesting.
Oh, man.
Yeah, pretty great. EGADS, it's eGrads. The University of Kentucky is addressing the need for virtual healthcare by offering telehealth training through a new graduate certification. The graduate certificate in telehealth is the first of its kind among health science colleges and is the only telehealth certification available in Kentucky. Since technology is driving the future of healthcare, the program is important for training future practitioners so they can reach underserved regions. The goal is to train graduate students and practicing professionals to be leaders in development, implementation, and evaluation of telehealth models. I feel like this is going to be more and more common as it keeps going. I mean, telehealth is growing, right? So
we've seen recently companies like Walmart talking about potentially putting telehealth offices into their stores. So
what do you think Walmart healthcare is like?
Better prices, better people? No,
wait, that's Papa John's.
Better prices, better pizza. Walmart telehealth. No, but it's cool to see a higher education place. What's the word I'm looking for?
University.
An institution of higher education implementing a program with its eyes towards the future and the direction that we ultimately will have to go and what we seem to be going towards. So having people that are actually certified, actually have some kind of training, some kind of advanced experience is going to be super cool. It's going to help that program develop in a much better way.
You know something is trending quite a bit when universities pick it up and offer some education on it.
Exactly.
So
yes, I'm expecting Facebook 101 to be a required course in the coming years.
Oh yes, it probably is in most marketing. And with that, let's jump into our next segment. BREACH, Breach Patrol. It's a breach! All of the latest cybersecurity breaches. Welcome to Breach Patrol, where we talk about the latest breaches all across the entire world. Alex, take it away.
First up, they don't teach you how to handle this in school. The government of Quebec admitted to a data breach potentially impacting 360,000 teachers employed in the Canadian province. Attackers used fraudulent credentials to obtain the information of current and previous teachers that was stored in the database. The investigation is still ongoing, but according to the most recent information, 51,400 people are affected. 400 teachers have already claimed to have had their identity stolen as a result of the incident. Impacted individuals can apply for free credit monitoring and will receive letters from the provincial government if their information was disclosed.
Whoa, 360,000 teachers.
What system has so much information on all of these teachers?
I have no idea.
Do they
That's
just have like a central database of here's all the teachers in Quebec?
Here's all I mean, I guess it is public record in some sense, so maybe it's something to facilitate keeping track of all those records, and maybe there's there's like a back end that has more personal information, and within that, it got breached. So.
Yeah, it's obviously enough to have your identity stolen.
Yeah, right.
So
otherwise, they wouldn't do free credit monitoring.
Right, but they're saying that people have already had their identity stolen. I'm trying to figure out what kind of database. Is this just like a payroll database? Is this?
Yeah, I don't know.
I suppose that could be it. Yeah. Like payroll or...
Who would hack Canadians, though? They're so nice. Next up, WhatsApp with this poor security. The messaging app WhatsApp group chat feature is not as secure as some users may think. Groups are normally only available to join by direct invitation within the app or by creation of a digital invite link that can be shared anywhere. But around 470,000 invite links were added to Google's index, allowing them to be pulled up with simple search terms. After identifying the issue, WhatsApp configured its chat site to request that search engines don't index invite links. But the exposed links are still appearing on other search engines and could still be published elsewhere.
Oops.
Yeah, this isn't that big of a breach, but I mean, having private conversations and getting into that could be a problem, especially if it's like a family thing and you're talking about personal information within those chats.
Right. But WhatsApp bills itself as being a secure place to hold your chats.
Yeah.
You know, end-to-end encryption, password protection, all kinds of ridiculous stuff that the type of people who are wanting to use WhatsApp to remain secure are probably not very happy about just a basic link being used to access these groups.
And it's interesting that they were even allowed to crawl, like Google was allowed to crawl those URLs anyways, right?
That's the issue. Because I know other services, like I can think of Discord, which is used by people who play games together online. They use kind of a link to get into different groups, and those work just fine because they're not indexed by Google.
No, they're just links.
Right. And
they have no index tags, which is not very hard to put within your HTML code.
Right. But on top of that, with Discord, you have to have an account, right? WhatsApp is kind of linked with your phone number. Mm-hmm. And so you could theoretically like join one of these groups having never had an account before. Whereas with Discord, if you were to accidentally click a link, it would be like sign in and you'd be like, what?
Yeah. Do you think that with this, WhatsApp is going to have a PR campaign where they try to boost the overall brand of their app again? And with that, they bring back the 1990s commercials, the WhatsApp commercial, but instead it's WhatsApp.
I sure hope they don't. That would be painful. They don't need it. I mean, WhatsApp is incredibly popular around the world as a communication platform. I mean, it is one of the biggest IM or text message type services. The easy way to solve this would be to have your invite links come from a different URL, and that entire URL is not indexed.
Right.
And they may already do this, but they just forgot for some reason to not index that site.
Yeah, as an intern.
But usually when you get invite codes from things, they're just like a string of random gobbledygook. I mean, it's just random numbers, letters, characters.
Yeah, and using search terms is like not something you would do.
Why would you find those via search terms?
Right.
I mean, I guess if you were looking for it, like you knew the domain.
I wonder if you could like look up like Alex Ross WhatsApp conversation and it would pop up. Like maybe that's the simple.
That would be an issue.
You know what I mean? Like maybe that is what it is though. Maybe that's why it is an issue because what are the search terms?
Or maybe by phone number. Like if you knew someone's phone number, you could just join in their conversation and you join in, you find out that they were really talking about you because you can see the entire history.
It'd be really bad if you just looked up their first name and it showed up like WhatsApp conversation.
WhatsApp conversation. Tom Cruise. It's like, oh,
hey Tom.
Hey, how's it going, buddy?
Hey, Tommy boy.
Who
big friend. I'm a very close friend with Tom, and he would not appreciate that.
I know, right? Next up, on top of it, in Lincoln, Nebraska, National Research Corporation Health of Lincoln, Nebraska, was the victim of a ransomware attack. It immediately shut down its system in an effort to contain the attack, launched an investigation, and notified the FBI. NRC Health's Chief Information Officer said that they've made significant progress to restore their systems and services to their customers. They anticipate full restorating in the coming days. He said there's no evidence of unauthorized access to or acquisition of any data as a result of this incident. Could have been much worse.
So this is why it's so important to have a chief information officer.
And to have all of these different processes.
Because a lot of times what happens is ransomware, I mean, at this point, you can assume that it's going to happen to your healthcare company, right?
At some point.
Right?
It may not be for 50, 60 years.
It may not be something that's that bad either, but at some point, it will happen. And when it does, you need to have these processes in place. And the only person that has the bandwidth to put these processes in place and the knowledge is a chief information security officer.
Right.
CIO or CISO. So definitely on top of it for sure.
Yeah, they were able to contain this, it appears, very quickly. It appears that they, they did my favorite technique when there's some hacking taking place. Just turn it off.
Turn it off and back it up. That's it.
Turn it off, unplug the internet, start it back up, and see what happens.
So when the hacker calls and says, "Is it plugged in?" you say, "No, it's not. It's not plugged in."
And that's it for this week's wrap-up of your weekly healthcare news. I'm Alex Ross.
And I'm Matt Moneypenny.
And we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of The Bandage. This week's episode was written and produced by eTactics. eTactics is a leading revenue cycle solutions organization committed to providing innovative, web-based solutions that improve our clients' cash management and customer relationships. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.